Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Rich, and what we'll be doing today is starting to take a look at SPQR by GMT Games. SPQR, The Art of War in the Roman Republic. Game designed by Richard Berg and Mark Herman. Graphic design by Roger McGowan. SPQR, as you can see, is part of a GMT Games series called The Great Battles of History that I'll share many of their basic concepts, kind of, more or less, I guess. The only other ancient era game in the series that I have is The Great Battles of Alexander, which uses a very similar set of rules to SPQR. In any case, SPQR originally came out way back in 1992, so I think it definitely qualifies as a classic, especially since its staying power has been pretty impressive. For example, the version we'll be taking a look at is the deluxe edition. That is the 2018 printing. So yeah, that was 26 years after the game was originally released. So definitely qualifies as a classic, right? And this deluxe edition has lots of extra goodies in it as far as scenarios and counters and whatnot. So you definitely get quite a bit of bang for your buck if you pick it up. Right up front, I'll go ahead and admit that I love this era of military history that's portrayed in SPQR, and I'm assuming you do too, since you're checking out this video. Or maybe you're just interested in learning a bit more about SPQR itself, as far as wondering if it's a decent war game. But as far as the era that's portrayed, the back of the box tells us that for the Roman Republic, the path to military preeminence in the Mediterranean world was neither easy nor direct. The Romans were blessed with a large patriotic pool of citizen soldiers who were the salvation of the country on many occasions. However, they were cursed by a political system that often gave command of armies to inept consuls who were inflexible military leaders. Time after time, the Roman Republic suffered horrific defeats due to these circumstances, but survived, learned to adapt, and ultimately perfected the most capable and powerful army of the age. So really a historical note there, I guess, which in game terms translates into battles where playing the Roman side, you may often be outnumbered or outgeneraled, but because of the famous Roman infantry, you'll always have a chance to win. And then there's the introduction to the rulebook, which tells us SPQR is the acronym for the Senate and the Roman people. But the game portrays the development of the art of war from the end of the Macedonian era to the heyday of the Republic of Rome. It chronicles and simulates the emergence of the Roman military system and its clashes with and eventual victories over the Macedonian system. So basically, the game portrays the beginnings of the army in the form of the Roman legion that would go on to conquer a good chunk of the known world. There are also some designer's notes in the back of the scenario book, designer's notes from Mark Herman and Richard Berg, and those are absolutely worth a read through. While we're talking about the rule book and scenarios, with this version of the game, you get the 4th edition rule book, 4th edition. As you can see, I downloaded the rules PDF from the GMT website and hit up the local FedEx store and had this printed with cover and spiral bound. I've done this with several rule books that I use quite a bit. It's not exactly cheap, but I think that it's worth it, especially for a game like this one, where I'm pretty much constantly referencing the rules. Then, of course, like with pretty much any game, there are some errata and clarifications, which you can find on the SPQR page on the games page at the GMT website, and I've printed those out and keep it here in the back of the rule book. And then what I've done is go through that, and wherever there's a change or a clarification to a rule, I've penciled a small star next to that rule here, so that if I'm looking up that rule, then I have that visual reminder. I see that, and I know to flip back to check for whatever the change or clarification might be. And there are also a couple of those changes or corrections for the player aid cards, and also for some of the scenarios. Besides the rule book, you get the original or basic scenario book with 5 scenarios. You get the deluxe scenario pack with 9 scenarios. And then the barbarian battle module with 5 scenarios. So if you're keeping count, that's 19 scenarios. There are also 2 player aid cards with a wealth of information. There are a lot of maps. You can see everything sitting on one of the maps here. And there are a ton of counters. This is just a sampling. You actually get 5.5 sheets worth of counters. So if you clip counters, that'll keep you busy for a while. So what I thought we'd do next is take a quick look at the playing pieces. And there are 3 types of playing pieces. There are combat units, representing the various types of fighting troops. Then there are leaders. And finally, there are information markers. As far as information markers, we're not really going to spend any time talking about them. You'll see them in use as we go through some examples of gameplay in future episodes. So all I'll say now is here's a sampling of them. And of course, they are all to help you keep track of what's going on with the units on the map. Next up, leaders. And leaders aren't just an afterthought in SPQR. In many ways, they're at the heart of the game system, since combat units can't really do much or anything without them. Well, anything offensively, and attacking is how you win a battle in SPQR. So yeah, leaders are vitally important to gameplay. As you can see, each leader counter has some numbers printed on it, which represent his capabilities. We'll talk more about activation, line orders, and individual orders, momentum, and trumping in a future episode. But for right now, I'll just point out that initiative is the most important leader rating. Initiative represents the leader's basic ability to control combat units. It also determines the order of his activation during a game turn. You see, in SPQR, how leaders are activated and in what order provides some tension and excitement that goes beyond the usual I go, you go gameplay. Because in SPQR, leaders become active during a turn based on their initiative rating. So that means you might have a Roman leader come up to bat, then 2 Carthaginian leaders, then another Roman commander, then a Carthaginian, and so on throughout the turn. And each leader counter has 2 sides, the active side and then his finished side. Last but not least are the combat units. As you can see, like with the leader counters, there's a lot of information conveyed here. Don't let it overwhelm you. The two most important pieces of information are easy to pick out. They are unit type and troop quality, unit type and TQ rating. Remember, we said that with a leader, the most important rating is his initiative. Well, with a combat unit, its most important rating is going to be its TQ number. TQ stands for troop quality, and it's basically how many cohesion hits the unit can take before it breaks and routes. So, what are these cohesion hits? Well, cohesion hits represent a unit's ability to remain in an organized fighting formation. And anything that threatens a unit's ability to stay in fighting trim may result in loss of cohesion. For example, the unit can take cohesion hits, represented by these markers. The unit can take cohesion hits for things like combat or moving twice in the same turn. But when the number of cohesion hits the unit has accumulated equals or exceeds its TQ rating, then the unit breaks and runs away. Or in game terms, it routes. So that's TQ rating. Then as far as unit type, as you can see, the rulebook does a good job of going through and explaining the different kinds of combat units, and this is really a must-read since understanding the different types of combat units and their capabilities will obviously play a significant role in how they should best be used in a battle, which is tactics, right? It's how you maneuver your units on the battlefield and attack with them, and that's just fundamental. Boils down to taking advantage of your army's strengths while exploiting the enemy army's weaknesses. All right, and that's where we'll start to wrap things up for now. What I thought we'd do next time is walk through the example of shock combat that you find in the rulebook. As you can see, we'll get out the counters and put them on the map and talk about each step of that example as we go through it. Since how shock combat, that's the hand-to-hand, hack and thrust, slash and crash, violent melee, but how shock combat is conducted is really at the heart of the game system. So we'll walk through that example in the rulebook, and then after that we'll play through the learning scenario that they give you to get your feet wet with the game, and we'll discuss tactics a bit and also talk about the rules that come up as we play through that little skirmish between the Romans and a mixed Carthaginian force. So I think that'll all be good stuff, kind of a continuation of this introduction to SPQR, and hopefully you'll tune in for it. And then after that, we'll play through one of the actual scenarios, one of the battles. I haven't decided which one yet, so if you have an idea, then let me know in the comments. But that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Until then, thanks and take care.